Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I am recording this on September 27th. There was a big explosion in Beirut. It was an attack by the Israelis on Hezbollah's headquarters. Huge attack. All right. So we're going to cover that a little bit. I was hoping to, wrap up my transmission for the day, but this started. So we're gonna listen into Al Jazeera. We don't know how many people were killed, what the collateral damage is yet, but this just happened. Like I said, a year ago, this was going to be a multi-front war, and that this was going to lead to a series of different borders changing for Israel. All right, and that this war was going to be a war not just with Israel and Hamas, but Israel, Hezbollah, Israel, and Iran, and that allied forces were going to get involved, and that uh, uh, through this war in the Middle East, that there's going to be a border change. All right, now will that will the borders change drastically in 2025? Who knows? But this is another step towards what I've been saying for a year. All right. This is huge, what just happened. So we'll cover it. So I'll cover it and give you my perspective. Again, watch episode 72, where I cover what transpired on September 24th, 2024, that gave me worry. All right. And how the events in the Middle East do connect to events in the Pacific theater, right? Especially with the U.S. stretching its naval fleet thin. All right. But there's a Kabbalistic, very heavy retribution feeling that I have with this news here. All right. Now, I assume it's retribution from the Israelis onto Hezbollah. But this is another inflection point. All right. For further conflict in the Middle East, and how it promulgates in international affairs at large. This is not going to be contained just in the Middle East. Trust me on this. All right. There's a larger thing that's emerging. Before we start covering, because we're going to be doing this for a while, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver liquid. You take a teaspoon of it a day, swish it in your mouth. It'll neutralize pathogens, maintain that mucosal barrier that you need. You swish it in your mouth and swallow it. Take a teaspoon a day. If you're not feeling well during the cold season, take a tablespoon or two a day. You can also get the Max 35 or the Max 14 structural nano silver liquid. You use it the same way. Because we're in the cold season, and maybe biological war season, who knows? Take the Manuka honey structural nano silver lozenges. I also have structural nano silver drops in cherry flavor, honey and lemon, and in blueberry in 100 count. The lozenges are on a 21 count because they're bigger. But the moment you have that irritation in your throat, take the drops or the lozenges. It'll neutralize the pathogen, maintain that mucosal barrier, and mitigate further infection. Right? It's really important. The moment you start having irritation in your throat, you should be taking the lozenges, because it has the structural nano silver, and it'll maintain that mucosal barrier and neutralize the pathogen. All right. Get a couple bags for your household. This cold season is going to be problematic. I don't think that the ICUs or the hospitals are going to be overloaded like prior years, but I do believe that there's going to be a reinfection and a rebound to this cold season. All right, so it's important to get it right away. Once you start having that irritation or you're not feeling well, you need to start, taking care of it right away. It's really important because there is a rebound effect. After you get it the first time, then about a week later after you clear it, it hits you again. So please go to my store and get the structural nano silver lozenges and drops. Get a couple bags for your household, really important. I have structural nano silver soaps. I have 5 different varieties. This one happens to be lemongrass, and this one charcoal tea tree. And get a couple bars. It's way better than Dove, and it's structural nano silver. It'll neutralize pathogens. It's a high quality soap. Structural nano silver toothpaste, really important. Whitens your teeth, freshens your breath, improves the gum line, reduces inflammation, and neutralizes pathogens. With good oral hygiene, you're going to have better cardiovascular health. It'll reduce inflammation and reduce valvular disease. Because if you get bacteria into your bloodstream, you may get calcium buildup and irritation on the valve, and over time, your valves will start to be diseased. So it's really important to have good oral hygiene. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get a couple tubes of this toothpaste. It's a very high quality toothpaste. Structural nano silver gels, dual purpose product, helps to heal wounds, abrasions, minor burns in about 1/3 of the time. You can use it as a skincare. Put it on your skin before you go to bed. Exfoliate in the morning. You'll notice that your skin is clearer and tighter. In addition, it'll neutralize pathogens. It'll also create a small barrier on your skin, kind of important for mpox. And you can put it around your mouth, around your nose, around your eyes, around your ears, around your, lightly coat your nostrils. Put it on your hands. It'll stay active for 5+ hours. It'll neutralize pathogens and it'll maintain that barrier. It's a dual purpose product. It's very high quality. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver gel. All right, let's figure out what's going on over in Beirut.
Excavator is being brought in. An excavator is now being brought into the site. So, yes, I'm sorry. I don't know if you can still hear me.
Yes, I
But
can.
they're bringing in excavators.
Yes. And so, Zena, I tell you what, why don't we leave you just for a couple of minutes to see what information you can gather in the area. I know it's very difficult terrain there now, but we will come back to you to continue the conversation. Let's speak to Elijah Magnier, who's a military and security analyst. He joins us from Brussels. He's been following this story very closely. I'm not sure if you had a chance to listen to what Zena was telling us. She is there at the site of this attack. But, Elijah, Israeli officials have spoken very openly in the past about their approach in Dahia, that they would make no distinction between civilian and military infrastructure. And is that something that needs to be taken into consideration here, that these attacks against civilian infrastructure is perhaps very much part of the strategy? It's not an unintended effect. All right, well, we'll speak to Elijah Magnier in just a moment. We'll get a connection to him, but he has been giving us some analysis on, and he was saying something very interesting just earlier on about whether this is the point at which Israeli calculations have changed as to whether this is the point at which they have chosen to use their capabilities in order to move against Hezbollah in a definitive way. And so, Elijah,
it's not just that. They're setting up for a ground war. They're killing their command and control. They're going to move in. They're going to destroy Hezbollah, and there's going to be land that's taken. I'm telling you, there's a larger situation that is biblical that's arising, and all these things that are happening around the world with pathogens and earthquakes and hurricanes and super volcanoes and tsunamis and military accidents and all this. There's a larger thing that's happening over a multiple year arc, and we're living through where people that don't get their house in order, if people don't wake up, they are going to be cursed. You're either getting on the side of Jacob or you're getting on the side of Esau, negative Esau, because Esau splits. I already explained this in a previous video. Esau's soul root splits into a negative and positive. And the positive one aligns itself with Jacob and Ishmael, while the negative one gets killed off. What side do you want? Pick a side and fight.
So the resistance is part of the population, and there is more support to the population. Nevertheless, the same style of the Israeli remain as it is. And the Israelis were very cautious, even if they have hit in the past few weeks commanders of Hezbollah in residential areas, starting with Fuad and killing 8 civilians, wounding 85, and bringing the whole building on the ground. It means that they are trying to hide behind the accuse of collateral damage, which Hezbollah, to a certain point, accepted because it has tens of thousands of civilians on the roads. They were all internally displaced and not wanting to open a wider door.
In another sign that of Armageddon, the grandmother from Downton Abbey died today. Maggie Smith.
The Israelis. But what happened today is, for the Israelis, business as usual. They consider it is their right to kill even civilians to a certain number, depending on the high value of the target they want to assassinate. They can kill up to 100 civilians, and that is tolerated in the Israeli army doctrine because they are unaccountable and they don't have morale in the ground and no laws for the war. So this attack in particular was not very timely for the Israelis because it did not reach the objective to assassinate Sayyid Nasrallah. So the news of the assassination of such a leader can cover up all the civilians that are killed, or even the attack on such a residential area that with this density in the middle of the Dahi that is inhabited by more or less 1 million people, regardless of those who have been internally displaced. So the intention to kill civilians is very obviously there. And I think this is when Israel will start adopting this doctrine from now on, because they open it up with 4 to 6 buildings completely on the ground, and they will not pull back from now on, because it's something that they have initiated in this war. They've done that in the south and in the Bekaa Valley against the homes of Hezbollah with their entire family, but they did not go to target a massive civilian area as they have done in 2006. I think this is the beginning of a very long war and a large killing, because there are many people in many areas. They know the area where the supporters of Hezbollah are, and normally they are living in a very densely concentrated area, and this is where they're going to go and target them, because now there are no more rules in this war.
Elijah, it'd be good to talk to you a bit more, actually. Thank you very much for now for sharing your insight with us. Elijah Magnia, security and military analyst, joining us from Brussels. Let's now get the latest from our White House correspondent, Kimberly Halkett. She joins us from Washington. Kimberly, how is the Biden administration likely to react in light of the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu only just in the past few hours rejected any possibility of there being a 21-day ceasefire previously proposed by Washington, and now this massive series of attacks in Beirut?
Well, the White House has not yet officially reacted, but one can speculate that this is only going to add to the already strained relations between the Biden administration and Israel. It is now the latest flashpoint in an already difficult relationship, given the fact that the White House, as you mentioned, had just already been optimistic that this was going to be a turning point in terms of the possibility of their proposal for peace, in terms of the ceasefire proposal of 21 days for further negotiations for something that could be more lasting and permanent, to allow for at least a de-escalation on Israel's northern border with Lebanon, so that they could also even start to consider the stalled process with regard to Israel's war on Gaza. Of course, that's something that's been in the works for 10 months and seems to be going nowhere. So we've had some reaction from the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, who says that the United States has consistently been working for almost a year for a ceasefire to allow captives to be returned and assistance for the Palestinians and for Lebanon to return safely. We also know that the U.S. President Joe Biden, who is not at the White House as we speak, but in fact is attending a private event up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, that is his hometown where he grew up, he has been briefed on the situation in Lebanon and is certainly abreast of it and is continuing to get developments. We presume we will hear more from the White House or from the National Security Council in the coming hours. But again, the fact that the Biden administration had been hopeful, had been working very diligently on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly all week with teams of diplomats from the United States working with their counterparts from Israel, trying to de-escalate, trying to avert a broader Middle East conflict, now to only see this kind of thrown in their face with another escalation from Israel is certainly not going to sit well.
But now America in a position where if the situation does escalate any further, they will inevitably be dragged into a war, because actually Lebanon is also an American ally, has also been the recipient of American aid. But at the same time, Washington has made it.
You know what it is? You know what the fucking problem with Al Jazeera and most of the mainstream media is? They have industrial amnesia. They forget that the national security state caused the fucking problem that we have in Iran. And people have to clean it up. They can't go nuclear, and they have a theocracy that wants to eliminate half of the Middle East. And because we kept on kicking the can down the road because we don't want to get the job done, we're at the point that we're at right now. So stop having industrial amnesia and kill off the enemy. Well, this is going to drag in America. The problem with Iran started with America.
There's annually in military aid to Israel that comes from the American taxpayer. Whether or not the American taxpayer agrees with that is another thing. And in fact, we've seen that very much.
You know what? The average American taxpayer is a fucking idiot. Why? Because the average American has an IQ of 98.
To Israel. And so this is going to leave the Biden administration in a particularly delicate position, given the fact that the Vice President, Kamala Harris, is now at the top of the ticket for the Democratic Party, Joe Biden's party, as the U.S. election is now imminent. It is less than...
Do you think Kamala Harris is a paragon of intellectual insight? No.
For the Democrats who are hoping for another term, given the fact that there is an entire generation that knows nothing but war, whether it's Israel's wars or the war in Afghanistan. They do not want to see it. There's enormous war fatigue, and this will certainly be something that will be very unpopular. So
yeah, and maybe we should get the job done so we don't have continual war. Get the job done.
Ordinary Americans, and very quickly, I should say one more thing. Even as the United States says that diplomacy is the answer and that they have been working on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly, on the very same day that they said that, yesterday, Thursday, they also resupplied, in addition to that annual billions of dollars, 4 billion almost, in annual aid to Israel, they topped that up by another almost $9 billion just yesterday, Thursday, to make sure that Israel was able to keep its what they call military quantitative edge in the region.
Yes, and that coincided with calls for there to be a ceasefire between Hezbollah and Israel. For now, thank you very much, our White House correspondent Kimberly Halkett reporting to us from Washington. Well, Al Jazeera senior political analyst Marwan Bashari joins me now from London. And Marwan, is Israel looking for the pretext to launch a ground invasion?
They're not looking for a pretext.
I'm not sure it does.
They're not looking for a pretext. They're developing the conditions on the ground for a ground war, a ground invasion.
We continue to do more of the same. And the key word here is more of the same. What they've done in Gaza, they're doing in Lebanon. And we said after Gaza, Lebanon. And clearly, they are acting with total impunity. And clearly, they don't care for the reactions or implications.
No,
or
no, no. Here's the problem. Here's the problem. Here's the problem. Hezbollah, Hamas, and Iran's theocracy, the Ayatollah, that whole theocratical apparatus is a cancer to the world. And someone has to go in and get the cancer out.
Hence, you could say that the bombardment that has gone on for about a couple of weeks could have been seen in addition to the rigging and detonating of thousands of communication devices, could be seen as a prelude to a land invasion. I mean, this is usually,
of course it is.
For the military, the land invasion is to attack what they consider to be command and bases.
What they
and
consider
rocket launches and so on and so forth.
But, you know, it was just taking the past week into account, Marwan, there is clearly no comparison between Hezbollah's capabilities. Thousands of its members have been injured recently. The leadership ranks have suffered a pretty high death toll as well. So there's no comparison between them and the military supremacy of Israel. And yet, when we reflect on how Hezbollah came into existence,
what's happening is that we're seeing in real time the actual extinction of Hezbollah. Watch. Over time, we're going to see the extinction of it because people were willing to get the job done.
Yes, absolutely. What Israel is dealing with nowadays in terms of Hamas and Hezbollah is the fruit of its own occupations, invasions, and offensive wars in the region. Hamas came to the existence after 20 years of occupations of the West Bank and Gaza and East Jerusalem, and a major crackdown and oppression, especially in Gaza, that eventually led to the rise of Hamas, especially with the First Intifada. The same thing for Hezbollah, that came to become what it is today, an organization, armed and so on and so forth, after the 1982 invasion of Lebanon. And it continued to grow with the Israeli occupation of South Lebanon that went on for 18 years. So there is no doubt that Israel has been in confrontation with the fruits of its own actions in past decades. And that's why when we analyze a situation like today and we see the horrors that unravel in Gaza and Lebanon, we say, wait a minute, but hasn't anyone learned any lessons? Because this will also be the prelude, this will also be the roots to something else. And that's what we've seen in the region now for, 75 years, or even a century, since the Zionist movement.
Where this is going is a larger Israel going to biblical borders. And it means the building of the Temple Mount. That's where this is going. I'm not in control of it. You're not in control of it. It's not something that we can control. It's just going to happen. Now, there's going to be death and destruction, but it's going to happen.
This each and every time we speak, Mariam. And that's the fact that it's also becoming a bit of a repetition, a bit of boring, sickening, tiring, listening to the Americans deny everything, right? We don't know, we're gathering information. Oh my God, what happened in Lebanon? We wanted a ceasefire. That kind of a game, right? That kind of a insulting the intelligence of everyone.
What about the fucking game that they did with capturing 150 or 200 hostages and bringing them into Gaza, trying to slow down the attack effort by the IDF and to try to, use them as pawns? That's a game. You know what? It's just the two sides need to just battle it out, and whoever wins, wins. But I have a feeling that the Israelis will win.
Use human sheets and all that kind of crap that they continue to repeat as nonstop, and the American officials repeating after that. So we cannot disconnect the two, right? So Israel continues to act with impunity. It goes from bad to worse, from one law to another law, and it continues to kill. It's drunk on power, drunk on impunity, drunk on violence, drunk on terror, and drunk and addict to American arms, finance, diplomatic shield, and so on and so forth. It's feeding into each other.
Okay, Marwan, do hang around. We would like to speak to you a bit more. For now, Marwan Bashara in London. I want to bring in Zaina Khodr because she is actually in Dahia, in Beirut, at the scene of the attack. What have you been seeing, Zaina?
Mariam, we have just left Dahir, that's Beirut southern suburbs, because we were not able to go live. We were told by security on the ground to leave the area. As you can imagine, the situation was tense, to say the least. We are talking about a massive attack. Multiple explosions, loud explosions that were heard across the Lebanese capital. When we reached the site of the attack, we saw smoke still billowing from what really was an area, total devastation. About 6 to 7 residential buildings are believed to have been leveled to the ground because of these strikes. When we arrived, we have gone to the Beirut southern suburbs on numerous occasions following Israeli airstrikes in the past few days and even the past few weeks. They were targeted assassinations, not as big as this one. I have never seen an attack like this in Lebanon, and I have been covering this country for many, many years, and I have not heard such a loud explosion, and I have been to many areas where there have been explosions. There was shock on the ground. Even the security, Hezbollah security, who deploy in the area after an attack like this, were in shock. They were not just shocked, they were angry.
CNN just published something as we're recording this. U.S. charges 3 Iranian hackers and imposes sanctions for allegedly targeting Trump campaign.
What is it? He said, I want you to tell them that we are people, that we want to live. We do not want to die, that we have a belief and we have a cause. I saw dead children. This is what he told me. And, for a man who is a member of an organization which has fought numerous conflicts and wars with Israel, it was very shocking for me to see this. He wanted me, any journalist, to relate to the world that they were people and that people are dying. I can't tell you, in the past 2 weeks, we entered a new phase in this.
What it is Hezbollah. What they did was Hamas and Hezbollah bit off more than they could chew when they attacked Israel on October 7th. Now they're getting their ass kicked. And Israel's going to go in and get the job done and destroy Hezbollah and knock out Iran. That's where this is going. And he's starting to have second thoughts because they're losing on the battlefield. So what it is they're playing to emotional fallacy, and you'll have these liberal journalists that'll try to get people on the side of the terrorists. You know, the reality of the situation is, if you want peace in the world that's long lasting, you better get out the cancer. And then they're going, well, we're people too. Why didn't you think about that when October 7th happened? Why didn't you think about that and be a part of a group of dignitaries to have larger peace with Israel, the United Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Egypt? No, you didn't want that. You actually wanted to deep six that peace agreement. And now Hezbollah just got seriously bombed. Well, you know what? Maybe they deserved it. That's the cold hard facts. Now you're going to have a group of people saying, well, Israel's just taking the land from the Palestinians. Well, why don't you give up your house to the American Indian then? Because that's the same logic. The reality of the situation is countries are established by war. And the ones that win get the spoils. It's really simple.
Explosions. They belong to members of Hezbollah, whether those working for the civil institutions of the group or the military institutions of the group. But I can tell you that day, people were blowing up in the streets, falling down on the floor, bleeding on the ground. Children were watching this. Children were seeing this across the capital. So this is a very traumatic experience also for a population who really felt that, okay.
Yeah, well, maybe the Lebanese should have made sure that Hezbollah wasn't established in their country, just like how the Palestinians should have made sure that Hamas wasn't established in their country. Too late. Too late.
Of the country and the east of the country that's close to the border of Syria. They've even carried out rare strikes north of Beirut and south of Beirut. But the southern suburbs of Beirut was really kept largely out of the equation because Hezbollah and Israel have this equation, if you like. If you target the Beirut southern suburbs, we will target Tel Aviv. There have been targeted assassinations, like I mentioned earlier, in Beirut southern suburbs, but nothing like this. So this brings in the question, Hezbollah's next moves, what will it be? Will it continue with its military operations, really, which have been quite pale, really, in comparison to what this group has been or is able to do? It has sent out messages that it has long-range missiles ready to hit areas deep inside Israel. But it's also treading very carefully because it knows that Israel's military strategy is actually based on the Dahi doctrine, a doctrine which involves putting pressure on the civilian population. And in that way, they believe this puts pressure on Hezbollah to cave in. Hezbollah did not cave in 2006, after 34 days of bombardments. Now, this time around, some people may argue that Hezbollah has suffered quite a number of setbacks, whether it was from the pager and walkie-talkie explosions, these assassinations of its top commanders. Members of its jihadi council have been killed in recent days and recent weeks. This is maybe
Hezbollah,
and these were military commanders.
Maybe Hamas and Hezbollah are getting their ass kicked in because they attacked Israel on Simchas Torah. Maybe. But again, Israel's at fault too, because the society's fractured between the conservative and the ultra-liberal. Before we go back to what she has to say, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get these very high-quality deodorants. I have it in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. I also have it in citrus. It's made from essential oils from the Himalayas. It has no aluminum or baking soda in it. It's all natural, very high quality, and it's a dual purpose product. You use it as a deodorant for males and females, but it'll also help to detoxify your body. So go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the deodorant in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree, or in citrus. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. Ashwagandha, really important to take every day. Why? Because it brings down your cortisol levels. It'll also bring down your glucose levels. Americans have too much glucose in their bloodstream because they're constantly eating bombs, and their cortisol levels are too high because they're stressed out. Maybe because they watch my show, I don't know. But take ashwagandha root and it'll bring down those cortisol levels. Cortisol also causes the immune system to be disrupted and to be less effective. So you want to bring down those cortisol levels. You want to bring down the glucose levels, bring down that inflammatory response. And by doing that, you're bringing down inflammation. Now, when you couple it with turmeric, which is an antioxidant and brings down inflammation, they work together. You're helping with your cardiovascular system and you're helping with your immune system. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the turmeric as an antioxidant and brings down inflammation, and the ashwagandha to help control your blood glucose levels, your cortisol levels, and help with your immune system.
The bombing in front of you, and the smoke was so close, it entered the house. And, you know, we used to say that this place is safe or it's away from the bombing, but it's no longer safe. You know, you have no idea. At any moment, you can just, like, it can happen to me as well at any moment, you know?
Can you just kind of take us through what it was like when the explosions took place? Because as we understand it, these were massive explosions, and it was a successive, at least five explosions which took place.
They were 12. They were 12. They were 12
explosions.
And, you know, I don't know how am I supposed to describe to you or take you into the moments of which I don't hope you experience such things. But, you know, it feels like, it doesn't feel real, you know, it doesn't, I'm seriously, I don't know how to describe it to you. We just hear something is exploding and the house is shaking and there were smoke everywhere, you know. I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know how to describe it to you to make you imagine such a horrible moment.
Did you see any injuries? Because of course we know this is a densely populated area.
No. The reason why she's asking that, the reason why she wants to know if she saw any, because if it bleeds, it leads on mainstream media. Because all they care about is carnage.
Places that are known to be heavily populated, and people gather there for a lot of reasons, because it just doesn't join only buildings that civilians live in, but there are cafes, there are stores over there. People go there all the time, and it's a store and it's a street that connects multiple streets together. So all people from places go to that place, go to that street to go to another place. So it's very populated and it's very crowded, and may God help the people that are under the rubble right now. But I can't imagine the horrific scene that's happening right now. And I don't go there, or I ran away from there because I was scared from another bombing that could happen. Because you never know what could happen.
Marwan Bashar is Al Jazeera senior political analyst. He joins me now from London. And so, Marwan, we have seen tonight alone a very significant escalation in Beirut. In terms of the options facing Israel, I mean, these bombing attacks could continue. I mean, the other thing I guess it could do is to become this kind of indefinite occupying force in more Lebanese territory. But it's not clear.
That's exactly what's going to happen. Because guess what? Biblical territory involves Lebanon. There's a new reset that's happening.
What you just said, in the context of our conversation now, as what's happening, what's unraveling, and of our previous conversations about the nature of this, what has come to be known as asymmetrical warfare. Just quickly, what do we mean by asymmetrical warfare? Asymmetrical warfare is when it's a war that's not conventional between two states. And the dissymmetry, meaning the inequality of forces between the two sides, is so big that they fight differently. Hezbollah fights in a way that is different from Israel.
That's what happened in the revolution.
That Israel,
in America, in the United States.
From the United States, the FLN in Algeria.
The British forces were more experienced and a larger force, and Washington had to do asymmetric warfare and play hide and seek. I mean, that's how war is. I mean, this guy is like, well, things are not fair. It's not fair anymore because Israel now is kicking ass.
Hamas and Hezbollah. Hamas and Hezbollah do not seek to destroy Israel in this asymmetrical warfare. All what they need to do is what the Taliban did in Afghanistan, what the ANC did in South Africa, and what the likes of the FLN did in Algeria against the French. Make the situation intolerable, make the situation untenable for the occupying forces, for the superior force, for the more powerful party. So in effect, America did not lose in Afghanistan, but the situation became intolerable after 20 years of war. They just couldn't win. And when Taliban would not lose, America couldn't win. The same thing in Algeria. France killed more than 1 million Algerians, more than 1 million Algerians, but ended up losing the war, not because it was less powerful than the FLN, because the situation became untenable for the French in Algeria, and they withdrew. Same thing in South Africa. They ended apartheid. So for Hamas and Hezbollah, the fight is not to win against Israel. Let's get this out of our heads. Hezbollah cannot win militarily against Israel, nor can Hamas. What they can do is make the situation, the security situation.
And that's why it's so important to destroy. That's why it's so important to root out the cancer.
For this population, untenable, meaning as long as the residents can go back to the north, and as long as the people in Tel Aviv cannot sleep at night, and as long as the industry does not work, and as long as Israel closes down something like 1/3 of its small businesses within a year, and if tourists are no longer coming, and so on and so forth, if that continues to happen over years, Israel will, like other countries, perhaps, come to the conclusion that the situation is not tenable. It has to withdraw from Gaza. It has to withdraw from the West Bank. That is the nature of it, and that is the nature of the difference between the objectives of the likes of Hezbollah and Hamas on the one hand, and Israel on the other.
All right, Marwan Bashar, thank you very much. It's 1800 GMT. You're watching Al Jazeera. Just want to update you on our breaking news story out of Lebanon, where Israel has bombed a densely populated civilian area in Beirut's southern suburbs. Israel released a statement.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the olive leaf extract. This is a dual purpose product. It boosts up your immune system and your cardiovascular system. How? Olive leaf extract can bring down LDL levels, increase your HDL levels, so it's improving your cardiovascular health by improving your lipid profile. In addition, it can bring down inflammation. By bringing down inflammation, that helps with the immune system and it helps with your cardiovascular system. Olive leaf extract is synergistic in a stack with nattokinase. Nattokinase is fibrinolytic, so it'll break up clots, but it'll also bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. So it's improving your lipid profile and improving your cardiovascular health. So take nattokinase every day. And omega-3 is synergistic with olive leaf extract and nattokinase. All right. Omega-3 works by improving your lipid profile, lowering LDL levels and raising HDL levels. That way you don't have to take statins because you're controlling your total cholesterol. In addition, omega-3 keeps red blood cells from sticking, so it reduces the chances of clotting. If you have a clotting problem, especially after 2020 crisis. All right, so if you don't want to get on statins, I highly recommend you to be taking omega-3, olive leaf extract, and natto kinase.
There's a lot of chaos, as you can imagine, at the scene. Our own Zainab Khodr was there a short while ago, and she described how people are dealing with this shock of what's just happened. One man told her that they've seen bodies of children being taken by ambulance crews away from the scene. Things are very, very tense in the Lebanese capital. I can tell you that. There's a lot of shops around us that have closed early. Many people are heading home. They are worried about what could come next. There is a lot of fear about who could have been the target of this attack. Of course, many are speculating that this kind of an attack on a civilian area in the capital, Beirut, would have had to be a very high target within Hezbollah for Israel to carry out this kind of a heavy...
Well, we'll find out who it is soon.
To basically justify them having this kind of high death toll. Expect, of course, as populated neighborhood, many civilians, nearly 700 civilians live in that area. And I've spoken to many of residents from Dahya who have decided to leave this neighborhood since last Friday when Israel began what it says were targeted assassination of high-ranking Hezbollah members. Of course, they claim that Hezbollah is using underground bunkers to hold their meetings, and it's where their command headquarters is based without providing any evidence. And the civilians are the ones that are caught in the crossfire. And their people are very angry. They're very scared about the events that have been unfolding in their country over the past week. The government says that they are now they have passed a state of crisis, a catastrophe. Hundreds of thousands of people have been displaced since Israel began its
Her transmission is a little bit bad. Another thing that you need to think about is that Israel is viewing this, the High Holy Days are coming, starts on October 2nd. That's when Rosh Hashanah happens. And, well, if you are forceful against your enemy, maybe they'll be a little quiet during the High Holy Days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Now remember, Hezbollah warned Israel of retribution and judgment in a letter recently, which kind of hints at maybe an attack during Yom Kippur. Oh, by the way, 51 years ago, there was a Yom Kippur war. So maybe Israel is going, think twice, Iran. And I think this is the reason why Netanyahu said something similar at the UN Assembly yesterday. Was it yesterday or today? But I think it was yesterday. But I wouldn't be surprised that Israel is flexing muscle and saying and giving a warning shot to Iran.
Well, there's no word yet. There's no statement yet on other people within the hierarchy, within the structure, within the command of Hezbollah. And of course, this is once again one of the biggest strikes that Hezbollah has had over the past few weeks. And given the fact the Israelis are trying to dismantle the command structure and command chain in the party and the organization, this just gives another indication how much Israel is trying its best to hit even in residential areas. It's not taking into consideration that people might be killed, especially that a place like the southern suburb is full of people. It's a residential area, and it's taking this as a pretext to strike with tons of explosives.
And is there any more information, Ali, about and why this particular building was targeted? I know that you've just said that Sayyid Hashim Safiuddin is safe, who is a senior member, head of the Executive Council. he is safe. Also, we know that Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, is also safe. But when they carry out attacks like this, I guess what they would argue is that there are bunkers that go very deep underground. And this was a huge attack, I think 20, 30 meters deep craters in the ground. And so what might they be trying to achieve from doing this?
They're trying to destroy their headquarters, honey. And get real.
Well, the fact is that over the past weeks, we've been seeing several attacks, similar attacks, but this is the biggest. Just erasing a whole block in a neighborhood or in a suburb gives an indication how much the Israeli military and also in their back the Israeli leadership are desperate to achieve something on the ground. But the fact is that there's something different here with Hezbollah. It has a different structure, it has a different body. Even with the killing of several of its commanders, it was still able to act and initiate sometimes, especially when we saw the attack on the surroundings of Haifa, close to Tel Aviv, trying to hit the Mossad headquarters. So all these attacks, all these steps, even within, under such a pressure, and even with the killing of several of its commanders, the group proved to be able to adapt to the situation.
Okay, thank you very much. Ali Hashim reporting to us from Tyre in southern Lebanon. Well, Ali Ajazi is the Lebanon country director for Lutheran World Relief, one of the humanitarian organizations offering support to internally displaced people in Lebanon. He is joining us now from Beirut. And over the past week, we have been speaking about hundreds of thousands of people who have been displaced, people who are moving very often from the southern parts of Lebanon towards northern Lebanon, but they don't always have anywhere to go. It's not clear if the Lebanese government has the resources to provide them with shelter and everything they need. What can you tell us about this mass displacement crisis in Lebanon right now?
Well, let's not, you know what? Let's stop whining about, let's stop whining about them not having provisions for, for the civilians. Why did they spend so much money on rocketry to send over to Tel Aviv? Why didn't they invest in their country for their people to be productive and prosperous instead of building rockets? Now, Americans need to wake up.
More than 200,000 IDPs as of today, and the number is expected to grow and skyrocket. I believe people, Mariam, were not ready. They were not given enough time. They had children and women. They had few minutes to take the ride in the car and move in a journey of 12 hours just to cross tens of kilometers towards Beirut and North Lebanon. So this is really catastrophic. We've seen women, we've seen children waiting in the car, looking for a place to go. They did not have money, they did not have enough resources, food, water. So everything is needed from the world to support this crisis. And this is what LWR is doing now on the ground.
I think the Lebanese authorities have spoken about opening more than 200 shelters across the country, with the majority of them being public schools. But this is probably only a fraction of what is needed to meet people's needs.
Exactly. Actually, the Lebanese government did like a plan. There is an emergency unit, and they're opening shelters. But the major problem is that the number of internally displaced people is huge. We are talking about over 200,000, and I believe this number would easily reach 500,000. So the number of shelters is not enough, and the shelters they opened are not equipped. We have a lack of electricity, of water, of really basic services that are needed for the internally displaced people to at least live with dignity. But all what they were looking for was their safety and to flee the war and atrocity of bombs and raids.
What are the implications of what you have just said? Help us understand how the company would help us understand how the country would cope with a scenario in which you have 500,000 people displaced. Presumably, there are people who would end up, this would affect neighboring countries in the region, because they would probably want to try and leave the country if no area feels safe.
According to UNHCR, over the past 72 hours, they were talking about 30,000, including Syrian refugees who moved to Syria. So this is completely true. And I want to elaborate furthermore that this is taking the country into a dramatic socio-demographic change. You can see the number of cars that Beirut is not able even to absorb. The streets, you have really, this is just the beginning of this humanitarian tragedy, and where you will see dire social consequences. Because remember, those people, they lost their access to income, to jobs, they don't have money. So furthermore, and through the days, they will be really running out of resources. And this is definitely will create more tension, more pressure on our infrastructure. And we know so well that the country has been living in a chaotic economic crisis since 2019. So definitely the consequences will be sporadic, and this is going to be an exponential impact on the socioeconomic dynamics in Lebanon.
I want to thank you for speaking to us tonight about this critical dimension of the story. Thank you very much, Ali Hijazi, Lebanon Country Director for the Lutheran World Relief Organization, which has been offering support to internally displaced people in Lebanon. Ali describing their scenario in which we could see 500,000 people displaced inside Lebanon as the country stands on the precipice of a major humanitarian crisis. If we see an even greater escalation, that we have already seen hundreds of thousands of people internally displaced, and Ali Hijazi from the Lutheran Humanitarian Organization describing a situation in which this is only likely to get worse because people have lost their jobs and livelihoods. They've been driven from their homes, and the Lebanese economy, already an economy in free fall, and with infrastructure that is struggling to cope and will not be able to provide the resources to meet the needs of the population. That was Ali Hijazi speaking to us there. Let's now bring in Hamza Salhout, who's live for us in Amman, Jordan, because the Israeli government has banned Al Jazeera from reporting within Israel. What are we hearing? What are the Israelis telling us, Hamza, about this attack in Beirut?
Well, lots of developments over the last couple of hours, but first, the Israeli military announcing that this was a targeted and precise strike in the suburb of Dahya, which is just south of Beirut, saying that it was targeting a Hezbollah command center, a headquarters for the Lebanese group. But they did not mention who the target, of course, of that airstrike was, but there is a lot of speculation. Let's also talk about what we're hearing from Israeli government officials. Now, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is cutting his trip to the United States short. He will be returning to Israel, leaving New York at 8 p.m. local time. His office also released a photo of him approving this series of airstrikes in Lebanon from his hotel room in New York. And officials speaking anonymously to Israeli media have said that he received the plans for the airstrikes before he had even left to New York. Now, the Israeli Defense Minister, Yoav Gallant, his office releasing a statement and photo of him him observing the airstrikes, along with the Army Chief of Staff and other security and defense officials from the Kiryat, that's Israel's defense headquarters in Tel Aviv. But the Army Chief of Staff has also just wrapped up a security assessment, saying that Israel is now prepared for a maximum level of readiness and preparation on both offense and defense. But it's important to remember some of the rhetoric from Israeli officials over the last several weeks, saying that they now have a new goal to accomplish as part of the war effort. Previously, there were 3 goals, and they were all related to Gaza. But this time, there was a 4th war goal related to bringing back those evacuated Israelis from those northern towns and settlements along the border. Israel says they still have a lot of work to do when it comes to attacking Hezbollah and continuous strikes in Lebanon. They say that they are absolutely not going to let up, and that there are even now fears of a looming ground invasion into southern Lebanon, something of which the Israeli military has been preparing for.
And Hamda, tell us how Israeli public, what their views are, what their opinions are on
It's mixed.
potentially a ground invasion or a protracted war in Lebanon.
Well, the Israeli military says they've been making preparations across the board and that they have a lot of military maneuvers and types of mechanisms that Hezbollah hasn't yet seen, but that they are prepared to use. Now, when it comes to the Israeli public, in fact, these attacks in Lebanon are quite popular among the Israeli public, especially those who live in northern Israel, who have not been able to go back to those areas near the border since they were evacuated by the government on October the 8th. There's actually somewhat of a joy among Israeli society now that Israel has decided to deal with the problem on its northern border. It's quite popular across the board, even with members of Israel's opposition within the government who are against Netanyahu. Some of his political rivals have spoken out against him throughout the entirety of this war, but said that they supported the army operations in Lebanon because there needed to be a restoration of the balance of power along Israel's northern border. Now, how long this conflict will last, will it go into a full-scale war? Of course, these are all things that are up in the air. Israel has said that they didn't want a full-scale war, but that they are prepared to fight one, while at the same time saying that the time for a diplomatic settlement with Hezbollah is no longer, that had expired quite a long time ago. So among Israeli society, this is quite popular, especially among those who live in the north, among the Israeli government. There is some mixed reactions of support. There are some who say that they are happy Benjamin Netanyahu has taken this kind of course of action. And then there are members of the far right of Netanyahu's government who say he's not being tough enough, that there should be this ground invasion into southern Lebanon, that there should be an occupation of Lebanese territory. So there are a lot of views, but there is overall support for the Israeli military actions in Lebanon.
Okay, thank you. Hamda Salhout reporting to us from Amman in Jordan. Let's head over to...
Before I go back to Al Jazeera, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the probiotic. I have it in veggie cap form and also in powdered form. I usually take the powdered form. It has a scooper. You just mix it with your food. I mix it with hummus in the afternoon. You can mix it with water. Either way, take the veggie cap form or the powdered form. But it's really important to improve your gut health by taking a good probiotic. It improves your metabolism. It improves the absorption of nutrients. And it also improves mental acuity and mood. So people sometimes get depression because they have a bad gut. People have skin problems sometimes because of a bad gut. People have metabolism problems because of bad gut. A bad gut also causes inflammation, which can lead to cancers or get pathogens, get sick quicker. So, a good gut biome will help to improve not only your digestion, but your metabolism and your mental acuity. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the probiotic either in the veggie cap form or in the powdered form. Go to the store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Back to this jackass.
by Israel. I think the same thing happened with Gaza. Eventually, the Israelis concluded that they need to leave Gaza.
God, I
They
can't
did
stand
in
it.
2005. They laid a siege on it, but they withdrew their troops from within Gaza. Now they're back to Gaza, and perhaps they want to go back to Lebanon. But history teaches us that, or teaches them, that their losses were far greater than their gains. Hence, the situation became untenable in Gaza, making sure that they withdraw. Same thing in 2000 when they withdrew from Lebanon. So once again, there is no real rationale for them to invade Lebanon, except if they think they are so sure of themselves that they really destroyed much of Hezbollah's infrastructure and rocket launchers and leadership and so on and so forth, that they are drunk on power and drunk on victory. And, as I said, addicted to American support, that they think they could get away with something like that. I personally still doubt it. But this fascist, fanatic Israeli government has really exceeded all expectations in their criminal minds. What they've done in Jerusalem, what they've done in the West Bank, certainly what they've done even in Syria and Lebanon and Gaza, tells us that if they are capable of genocide,
I'm telling you, this is going to biblical borders.
The bombings that they've done today, and they are capable, yes, of destroying much of South Lebanon. They are a very dangerous bunch.
Well, Marwan, when we speak about Israel's kind of strategic calculations and options about degrading and destroying Hezbollah's capabilities, moving its citizens, its residents back to the north of the country, securing the north of the country, I mean, all of these conversations are fine, but I suppose the real question is whether or not Benjamin Netanyahu thinks a protracted war with Lebanon could threaten his political survival. It feels as though that is the factor that will ultimately influence the direction of this war.
That's kind of interesting again to look at that important question in historical perspective. After the 1979 Camp David agreement between Israel and Egypt, Israel felt powerful and supreme. It was able to bring the strongest Arab country to the negotiating table and made sure it's sort of neutralized. And so when 82 came, they invaded Lebanon, right? And they thought that they were so powerful. This Likud government, sort of the gurus of the Netanyahu government, Begin, Sharon, and so on. They invaded Lebanon, but only 1 year later, 2 years later, they began to regret having invaded Lebanon. In fact, if you remember, unlike this thick-skinned war criminal Netanyahu, who feeds in on war, Begin at the time decided that he was going to step out of office after the invasion of Lebanon and the massacres in Sabra and Shatila in Lebanon against the Palestinians. So the lessons from 82 was quite dramatic. Even though they smashed the country, they bombed the hell out of Beirut, they kicked out the PLO from Lebanon into Tunisia. But Israel's security did not improve, and clearly with the rise of Hezbollah, it became even more so a danger to Israel in the north. So now the idea that they would once again do that and expect that their popularity will only increase and the stability of their government will only improve, tells us that they haven't learned much of their own history in this region in terms of overreaching, whether it is in Gaza or in Lebanon.
Thank you for now, Al Jazeera senior political analyst Marwan Bashari joining us from London. Let's now hear from our White House.
He'll talk about Palestine, but he lives in London. Lovely.
Emily, what is the Biden administration saying about whether they had advanced warning of this attack?
Yeah, well, what we're hearing, we've consulted with both the National Security Council as well as the Pentagon. Now, the National Security Council says it's still gathering info from a broad range of its different intelligence sources as well as counterparts. But the bottom line is, according to the Pentagon, the U.S. was not involved in this latest operation conducted by the Israeli military inside Lebanon. What it says is it also had no advanced knowledge of the operation. However, what we do know is that the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, was on the telephone with the Israeli Defense Minister, Yoav Gallant, while the operation was underway. Now, what details were shared about the extent, whether there will be further developments that are similar in nature, we do not know. All we know is that the United States was informed of the operation as it was ongoing. Now, what the Pentagon spokesperson Sabrina Singh is telling Al Jazeera is that the United States maintains, in the midst of all of this, that it still believes that diplomacy is the way out of this escalation, an escalation that we have seen ramping up day after day for more than a week now. What the goal of the United States is to avoid wider regional Middle East conflict. So what we're hearing is that the engagements that we've seen all week at the United Nations General Assembly between Israel, between the United States and its allies, is going to continue. What has been going on all week that resulted in that proposal for a 21-day ceasefire that was put forward in that joint statement between the United States, France, EU, as well as 6 other nations, that was flatly rejected by the Israeli Prime Minister in advance of his address at the UN General Assembly that took place on Friday today, as well as also when it was, I apologize that my phone is going off, as well as the fact that it was also in advance of these strikes. So again, as the United States says that it is continuing to push for diplomacy, it is also working with a government that is, and its ally, that is flat out refusing diplomacy and rejecting the very proposals that the United States is offering as the means to end this escalation.
I guess the thing is that with the faltering ceasefire
No,
negotiations.
you know, the thing is, a
over Gaza-
ceasefire allows for Hezbollah and Hamas to regroup and do this again, and it'll only get bloodier, and there'll be more people that get killed that are military or even civilians on both sides. So it's better to get the job done now. I've been saying this for a long time. Get the job done now, because it's going to be worse later, especially with unconventional warfare. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the lignans. Lignans are very important to boost up your immune system and your hormonal health. This is for males and females. It's really important to boost up your immune system and support your endocrine system. Why? Because we're bombarded by chemicals, chemtrails, bad water, bad food, all right? And it affects our immune system. On top of the aftershock from the 2020 crisis. Take my advice, take lignans. It's a powder. You mix it with your food or with water. Take it every day. It'll help to boost up your immune system. How? It's an antioxidant and it brings down inflammation. Synergistic with the other antioxidants and anti-inflammatory supplements. Resveratrol, really important because it helps to get rid of senescent cells. Helps to improve the tissue health and age. It's an antioxidant. It's synergistic with C60 and ubiquinol. It'll help with mitochondrial health. I've been taking ubiquinol for many years. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get resveratrol. Vitamin C, important for your skin, and it's also important for your immune system. We're in the cold season now in the United States. You're going to need extra vitamin C, trust me. So please go to the store and stock up on vitamin C.
And it was the one that authorized the $9 billion that it got again yesterday on Thursday. So the fact that the White House and Congress itself are pushing for diplomacy, wanting to see this de-escalation of tensions, to see Benjamin Netanyahu, who, by the way, just addressed the U.S. Congress just in recent memory, just a few weeks past, to disrespect the U.S. Congress as well as they are asking for peace and providing money for Israel's security is again a disrespect not only to this White House but also to this legislative branch. It's not going to sit well here in Washington. There are going to be many people here who are going to be very, very angry with the escalation after they have cautioned the exact opposite.
All right, thank you very much. Kimberly Alcott reporting to us from
Get the job
Washington,
done.
D.C. I want to now bring in Tawhid Asadi, who is a journalist. He joins us from Tehran, and there are reports here from the Reuters news agency, Tawhid, saying that Iran's embassy in Lebanon said that the Israeli strike on Beirut's southern suburb represents a dangerous, game-changing escalation, and that they will bring its perpetrators an appropriate punishment. So that's a direct quote from Iran's embassy in Lebanon. How will Iran's leadership be viewing this attack in Beirut tonight?
Well, in the past days, Lebanon has been witnessing a series of devastating attacks that have further escalated the tensions in the region. And from the Iranian perspective, I think these events are seen as a continuation of aggressive actions aimed at destabilizing the region and sort of failed attempts by the Israelis to bring the resistant front to its knees. But the truth is that the situation is further complicated. And speaking of what happened today, either we consider it as a failed.
You know what's
plot
amazing
or
with
a
Al Jazeera? They can't find any pro-Israel perspective and put it on their channel. All right. I mean, none. I mean, there's such a large network. Don't you think that they could find some people that are pro-Israeli perspective? I mean, put on Alan Dershowitz, for crying out loud. We have chemtrails all over the place. We have lots of toxins in our water and in our food, and you need to detox it by your body. Take zeolite. It's a negatively charged molecule. You put a few drops underneath your tongue and drink it with filtered water. Take it every day, all right? And what it'll do is that negatively charged molecule of zeolite will attach to positively charged toxins, chemicals, and heavy metals. And that will allow you to urinate the toxins out and heavy metals in about 6 to 8 hours, all right? Now, you can take zeolite every day throughout the whole year, all right? Or, take just a couple drops underneath your tongue for maintenance throughout the whole year. Or if you want to do a 1 or 2 bottle a year detoxification, that's fine too, all right? It's better to detoxify your whole body all year round, but some people only do it maybe once or twice a year and just take the, use up the bottle and just put about 4 drops underneath your tongue and swallow. But the bottom line is that you want to get those forever chemicals out of your body. You want to get those toxins out from your water and your food. All right. There's lots of pesticides. There's forever chemicals because of cleaning agents in your house, or even repellent, water repellent clothing has forever chemicals, the PFAS, and PFAS. So it's important to get that stuff out. It's bad for you, all right? But you can get it out. Filter your water, eat better, have higher quality food, stop eating processed foods, and take zeolite to bind those heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the zeolite. D3, very important to absorb calcium. It's a gene expression cofactor, so it helps with cellular processes, and it helps to get rid of cells that are infected. It gets a cell to go into apoptosis. I take a soft gel capsule, a soft gel in the morning, and another one at night. Talking about night, if you can't sleep, go to my store and get the Good Night formula. Why? Because you need 3 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep to be able to be well rested, to detoxify your body, and to have consolidation of memory. Chronic sleep deprivation causes damage to your neurons because it accumulates toxins in your central nervous system. And your acuity will go down, and you can increase the chances of getting later in your life dementia. All right, so you don't want that. Dementia is bad, trust me. My father has dementia, right? He has ischemic dementia, but you don't want dementia, trust me. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Good Night formula.
They gain away and they don't want to spill the beans. We are certain, based on what we are hearing, that at some point Iran is going to provide these units with a crushing response. But whether it's not the time of this, it's not the matter of whether, it's the matter of timing. And Iran is putting emphasis that the issue of timing and the issue of quality of this response is a decision for Iran to be made, and not any other player. Just briefly speaking, what we are hearing is on the basis of this statement, Iran does not want to play in the playground dictated to it by West or Israelis. That's what we're hearing these days.
Okay, thank you very much, Tawhid Asadi, for joining us from Tehran with the perspective from there. Ali Rizk is a security and political affairs analyst. He is still in Beirut and with us now. I wonder if you might put all of this into context for us, because we have heard about members of Hezbollah, so-called high-value targets, being inside of this building. But really, when you see an attack on this scale, you have several high-rise apartment buildings, residential buildings that now lie in complete ruins. How much of a catastrophe is this for the civilian population there?
Of course, it's a catastrophe.
Before I answer that question, allow me just to comment on the issue of the targets. I also heard from a Hezbollah source that Sayyid Hashim Safiuddin is safe, and I also heard that some other names who were supposedly targeted, including the head of the liaison and coordination unit, Rafiq Safa, he also is safe according to this Hezbollah source. He was one of the other names or other people whose names were circulated as possibly being harmed or targeted in this attack. So it does appear that the big names haven't fallen. Now that leads to 2 possibilities. One is that the Israeli assassination attempt to carry out or to take out a senior figure has failed, or the Israelis have taken out a senior figure, but not one of the well-known senior figures, one of those military officials like for example, Ibrahim Aqil, or the other commanders which the Israelis have taken out. Regarding your question about the civilian population, indeed, this is something, which we haven't seen before. I was at walking distance, by the way, from the site of the explosion. And, the situation, the civilians haven't seen anything like this. Even locations which lie quite far away from the actual site felt strongly the impact of this blast. And I think that this piles up the pressure, to be honest, on Hezbollah. And many people are now asking, what is Hezbollah waiting for? Why doesn't it unleash an even a much stronger attack?
Because they destroy their command and control
operations which have taken place thus far. This also strikes at the heart of Hezbollah's supporting environment. So there are many, many additional pressures, I think, which makes Hezbollah face a rather unique challenge. Up until now, Hezbollah has been able to reach.
It does, but can I just jump in there? What do you think? It's Hezbollah is now under pressure to respond. This is the challenge they're facing, but their predicament could become much more difficult if they choose to respond to Israel's attack more forcefully.
Indeed, that's what I was going to say. Hezbollah is under pressure from 2 directions. Under pressure to respond more forcefully, where there's a segment of the Lebanese population which is calling for that. Some of the people, of course, its supporters continue to be committed and to believe in its strategy. You have those people, if you like, who are neutral or somewhat supportive, who are asking that question. You have, on the other hand, the domestic political situation in Lebanon, the dire economic conditions, and that pushes Hezbollah not to issue a forceful response. So there is pressures on Hezbollah, as I said, from two directions. And now I think the challenge lies with striking that correct balance, with trying to restore a certain level of deterrence, and at the same time not risk or not fall into the Israeli trap of igniting an all-out war. Thus far, Hezbollah has managed to strike that balance, but I think now it's much more challenging.
And if Israel were to embark on a ground incursion, how strong would the resistance be from Hezbollah, despite the injuries and the setbacks that they themselves say they have suffered over the past week? How would they be able to repel a ground incursion by the Israelis?
Look, I'm not sure that taking out senior commanders or senior figures will have a big operational impact on ground operations. Israel has taken out many of the military brains, if you would like, of Hezbollah, but there are a lot of other military brains. I think that the Israeli approach is to try and make Hezbollah collapse from the above, the higher end of the pyramid, if you would like. That's the Israeli approach, assassinations, but at a whole new level, which we haven't seen before. But I think Hezbollah's real strength lies at its base, in the base of the pyramid, if you would like. And that base is represented by supporters, by average fighters, and more importantly, by ideology. So if this is Israel's approach or strategy to try and make Hezbollah collapse from the above, I'm not sure that's going to succeed, and I'm doubtful that this will have or will greatly impair Hezbollah's capabilities to put up a very strong fight should Israel proceed with a ground invasion.
Okay, Ali Rustan, thank you very much for speaking to us, for sharing your thoughts on these developments here. And actually, we do still have with us Al Jazeera senior political analyst Marwan Bashara. And Marwan, is there perhaps more caution, more hesitancy inside Israel in...
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and take NAD+. I've been adding this to my protocol. This brings up your energy levels. It helps to heal your DNA damage. So it works to improve your DNA repair mechanism. And it also helps to improve the health of your neurons. So this is important to keep that mental acuity going when you get older, keep that energy level up. It's synergistic with ubiquinol and NAC and C60, and it helps to repair DNA damage. Please go to my store and take the NAD+. This is important to add. This is an important feature, especially the repair mechanism for the DNA. Now, ubiquinol. Now, I've been taking ubiquinol for many, many years, and it's the active form for CoQ10. I now have it on my store. You can add it to your protocol. Why do you take it? It's an antioxidant. It will help to improve your energy levels, and it helps with neural health. So if you don't want to get stupid when you get older, you want to take ubiquinol. It's synergistic with NAD+, C60, and some of the other antioxidants that I have mentioned during this video. Take ubiquinol every day. NAC, very important to add to your protocol. Why? Because it increases your glutathione levels. That's another pathway to soak up free radicals. Free radicals are bad because they make you age. So you want to soak up those free radicals. In addition, NAC helps with mental mood. It helps to calm anxiety. And it helps to detoxify your liver and your kidney. Take NAC every day to get those glutathione levels to their maximum. So you soak up those free radicals. It's synergistic with C60. It's synergistic with ubiquinol. It's synergistic with NAD+. K2 and K7, very important to help with your bone health, your joint health, and your cardiovascular health. It's synergistic with many of the things that I've mentioned in videos, especially D3.
Worn down, they're tired. I don't know, that we get these headlines and images of troops being deployed to the north, but there could be real readiness problems there that we're not aware of, because obviously that's not information that they would disclose. But if this will be a critical decision about whether or not they choose to go into the south, because they will be up against some very tough, hardened fighters.
Well, let's start with your assumption, which I think the Israelis disagree with. That's not how Israel is seeing the balance sheet of 1 year of war in Gaza. Now, of course, it depends on our assumptions. Are they the declared objectives, meaning diminishing Hamas, bringing back the captives, or is it something else? To my mind, the Israeli rationale is, and has been, to destroy Gaza. And they did destroy Gaza. So even if Hamas, is left intact, or some of it, and even if there are a number of Hamas fighters and supporters still deployed or hiding in tunnels and still holding onto a number of captives, Hamas's capacity is nothing like what it was 12 months ago. It's completely diminished. There's absolutely no doubt about that. And Gaza is destroyed. So even if Hamas somehow manages to come back and rule over Gaza, somehow, by miracle, it's going to spend the next 2 decades trying to just heal the wounds and build the minimum needed infrastructure in the Gaza Strip. In a circumstance that we don't know what is going to be exactly, because Israel is going to maintain the siege over Gaza. So I'm not sure if any reconstruction will happen. Let's remember, Mariam, and I think our viewers around the world have been witnessing this for a year now, where the hospitals destroyed and the schools destroyed and the water infrastructure destroyed and the electric infrastructure destroyed in universities and so on and so forth. Gaza has been really bombed back to the Stone Age in some form or another.
Marwan,
So
can I ask you actually something, just as you make this point? Can I ask you, because I was just speaking to a member of the Lutheran Humanitarian Organization in Lebanon, who said that the country stands at the precipice of a major humanitarian catastrophe with up to 500,000 people who could be displaced, not after having been driven from their homes.
There's no, where's the proof of that? I mean, that's just a number he threw out. Where's the proof? 500,000 refugees. Really? I mean, where's the reference of that? He was just being interviewed and he just guessed.
That's exactly what they have threatened with. Remember, Defense Minister, let's call him Offense Minister Gallant, and Foreign Minister Katz, and a whole bunch of other people in Israel threatening to turn Lebanon into another Gaza. I mean, that's exactly what they've been threatening for weeks, not even months. That's exactly.
Yeah, but Hezbollah kept on shooting rockets. Maybe Hezbollah should stop. Maybe Hezbollah should stop making the rockets.
This is
the rockets flying over.
This is the problem with what Israel is doing. It's using its utmost capacity.
No, what it is with this clown is that Hezbollah is okay, but everything that Israel does is bad.
And use that dissymmetry of forces in order to exact so much suffering, such a high cost on the Lebanese people as it did on the Gazans, in order for them to back down. Now, Gaza is a different situation because it's been under occupation forever. Lebanon has been relatively a free country. Yes, it's been under threat. Yes, it's been divided. Yes, it's gone through civil wars. Yes, it's gone through invasion. But relatively speaking, Lebanese people they have their own issues, but they've been a sovereign free country, unlike Gaza that has been under occupation. So their capacity for patience and for suffering is not necessarily the same like Gaza. So what they're saying is, wait a minute, and here I took totally agree with them, with the Lebanese people who are objecting to the ongoing situation. They're saying, why is the burden on the Lebanese people alone? Where the hell are the 300, 400 million Arabs? Why should Lebanon pay the price for the imbalance of power with Israel? Where is Syria? Where is Iraq? Where is Egypt? Where is the Arab world? Why should Lebanon?
This is the point I'm making. You have people like him that are trying to recruit. This is exactly what I'm talking about. How Israel's borders are going to grow. They're going to try to recruit other Arab nations to help Lebanon. All right. And what that's going to do is it's going to cause a more larger regional conflict. And that's going to get chaotic. And Israel eventually wins. How, I don't know exactly. But those borders are going to go back to the however the war ends, those borders that are biblical borders go to Israel. Israel somehow, some way will probably, my guess is that Israel will have more land and then negotiate away some of the land that they obtained during the war and go to the actual biblical boundaries. All right. That's my gut feeling. But him trying to recruit those other nations, that means that Egypt's going to lose the Sinai Peninsula. If Jordan comes in, Jordan is going to lose east of the river. The West Bank will be completely Israel's. The Golan Heights, completely Israel's. Certain areas of Lebanon will go to Israel. Same thing with Syria. So be careful what you ask for, dude. That's exactly what I was saying was going to happen back in October of last year. That it was going to, there was going to be an emergent property through this multiple front war that will bring a larger conflict, and Israel will win. It's not going to be easy, but the biblical boundaries are going to be established again.
The raise of a complete block alongside with other buildings around it. This is huge. This is big. Of course, Dahi to many is somewhere where all people coming from villages,
really
from towns.
Additional information at this moment in time. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. I have it in MCT coconut oil, extra virgin olive oil, and avocado oil. You can get it in a 2-ounce, a 4-ounce, or an 8-ounce configuration. C60 is a molecule that's suspended in a lipid. That's why it's in an oil form, because it's lipid soluble. And you take a teaspoon of it a day. It'll soak up those free radicals. And the whole idea, because it's very potent, the whole idea is to take it every day and take it on an empty stomach for better absorption. If you work out, take it before your workout, and it'll soak up those free radicals during your workout, and you'll recover quicker. Your energy will increase because the mitochondrial health will improve, and it's synergistic with many of, or all of, the antioxidants that I have mentioned in this video. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. Extra virgin olive oil, avocado oil, or MCT coconut oil. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. That's the end of the broadcast. This was kind of a new thing because it was breaking news. Hey, hold on. Let's see what Saudi Arabia is talking about here.
المعالم لتنفيذ حل الدولتين، فالدولة الفلسطينية حق نصيب وليس نتيجة نهائية سليمة من الانتظار، وحان الوقت للتحرك الجماعي الجاد.
Thank you. Well, as we always said, without solving the Palestinian problem and end the suffering of our people that started the Nakba in 1948, the region of the Middle East will continue. It's time for the state of Palestine to be established and on the ground and as fast as possible to end the misery, insecurity, and the problems of the Middle East. We are believers in peace and prosperity for all. We thank all countries that recognize Palestine. We also invite others to do the same. We thank the contact group, Arab and Islamic countries, done a terrific job to support the statehood project. We believe that the UN Security Council resolution, the United Nations General Assembly resolution 10 days ago is a very good start to end the occupation, start serious effort to establish the Palestinian state and ensure that the whole region will live in peace and prosperity once and for all. Thank you.
سؤالي معالي الوزير بالنسبة لما حدث اليوم من قصف حزب الله في بيروت.
So I'm just going to stop the broadcast here. Thank you for watching. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and make sure that you follow my work on all 4 channels on YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. Ask your social media to follow me so I can reach a larger audience, so I can try to improve the audience's health by following protocols that I follow. I mean, the stuff that I have on my store is the stuff that I take, all right? And it works. It boosts up your immune system. It slows down the aging process. You have more energy and more vitality. So I'm trying to share what I do, all right? So please go to my store, improve your health. You can do it. You can improve your cardiovascular health. You can improve your diabetes situation. You can improve your endocrine system problems. You can improve your immune system. You can improve your mental acuity. You can slow down the aging process. Take my advice, and and hopefully, you follow what I do on a daily basis, and you'll see the compound benefits that I have benefited from too. So please go to my store and subscribe. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.